guys.
Welcome to the webinar.
Yeah, welcome, and thank you for joining us today for Notes from the Field, the 2020 SAGE Post-Occupancy Evaluation. It's a SAGE webinar, again, presented this time by Amy Carpenter, Migette Kaup, and Steve Lindsey. And at this time, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Migette Kaup, and I'm a professor and design educator at Kansas State University. I've been involved in SAGE post-occupancy evaluation teams for about 5 years now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amy Carpenter, and I am an architect with SFCS Architects in their Philadelphia office. And I have been involved with the SAGE POEs since about 2006.
And I'm Steve Lindsey. I'm the CEO at Garden Spot Communities in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I'm a SAGE board member and have been involved in the POEs for about 3 years. It's great to be with you all.
That is fantastic. I had no idea, Amy, that you had been involved so many years too. So that's interesting. My name is Jill Schrader. I am the SAGE Vice President this year, and I will be moderating this webinar session. I am based out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and we do have snow right now. I just want to let everybody know on that. For those of you that are not familiar with SAGE, we are the Society for Advancement of Gerontological Environments. It's a membership-based organization representing and promoting collaboration between all disciplines in the senior living industry. SAGE is pleased to present AIA-approved webinars every month, and these webinars are free to SAGE members. So please visit sagefederation.org for information on SAGE membership. And I think you'll agree that with the networking and educational opportunities, conference discounts, and more, it's $95 well spent. You'll be muted throughout this entire webinar session, but you will have the option to type in any questions by clicking on the Q&A button at the top of your screen. And if you don't see it right now, maybe hover your mouse around a little bit and it'll appear. We'll answer those at the conclusion of the session, if time allows, and please keep your questions relevant to the topic that is being discussed. SAGE is an AIA-approved provider, and participants in this course are eligible for one AIA learning unit. And please note that you must be registered for and logged into the webinar to receive AIA credit or a certificate of completion. SAGE will report credits earned by course attendees to AIA CES and will provide certificates of completion within 1 week if requested. If you did not enter your member number or request a certificate of completion upon registration, please don't worry about it. Just email us at info@sagefederation.org. The information presented in today's presentation is protected under copyright. And at this point, I'm going to hand things over to our panelist who will get us started. Amy?
Yep, and first I just want to say a very big thank you to J&J Flooring, who sponsored our POE efforts and have sponsored us for the last several years. So let's just start out by, I want to explain a little bit about our process first. As Jill so ably mentioned, about SAGE, that I would expect most of you on the call are very familiar with SAGE, but for the few that aren't, please check out our website to learn more about us. As Jill said, we are a not-for-profit, multidisciplinary organization that advocates for better physical environments for elders. We, besides the educational events that Jill mentioned, we also participate in code change efforts through FTI and ICC committees and jury design competitions and a number of other events. This is our mission statement. The key, though, we think, is our multidisciplinary membership and the collaboration between all of the different organizations. We like to say great minds join SAGE, so if you aren't already a member, please consider joining us. So what is a POE, or post-occupancy evaluation? It is a process of evaluating buildings in use. We like to go into a building at least a year after it's been open to see how it's doing. There are several levels of investigation, but what we do is the lowest level, called an indicative POE. It's a one-day visit where we walk through the building, we conduct interviews with staff and residents, and then we correlate all of our findings. SAGE has been conducting POEs in this manner since 1999. So let me introduce the team. First of all, myself, I'm an architect with SFCS in the Philadelphia office. And we have Steve Lindsey, who is the CEO of Garden Spot Communities in New Holland, Pennsylvania. Migette Kaup, who is an educator at Kansas State University. Chris Morphus, who is a food service designer. He is with KRM Food Service in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we had Keith Gray, from the former director of applied research from J&J Flooring out of Atlanta, Georgia, and he is a materials scientist. We had Lori Reynolds, who is a professor of occupational therapy at Northern Arizona University in Phoenix. And last but certainly not least, we had Russ McLaughlin, who's an architect with AG Architecture in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our goal is always to have a multidisciplinary team because each of us looks at the environment through a different lens, and that results in a more complete picture. So now I'm going to turn it over to Migette to tell you a little bit about our process.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. So the first step in our process is obviously to identify a site. We target projects that have been recognized for their excellence through the Environments for Aging Design Showcase. So in essence, we're looking at work that's already been peer reviewed. We are focused on projects that have clearly stated programmatic design goals and hopefully some unique design features that we can see and then share with others who would like to know more about how these innovative approaches are working out. For the past 2 years, a supplemental white paper has been issued in addition to the regular follow-up webinars that are offered. Since we're making an effort to publish these materials, we are also committed to adhering to the protocols that demonstrate that we're protecting the rights and interests of the individuals who contribute to our findings. All of our team members have completed the federally mandated training through CITI for projects that use human subjects in research. Although interviews might seem like an innocent enough method, we recognize that any resident or staff member who participates should understand that they're under no obligation to speak with us. And if they decide not to participate, that their relationship with their home or organization will not be affected in any way. We also have training in knowing how to protect the identities of users if they provide feedback that might be considered critical of the setting. The SAGE POE project is an approved project through the Kansas State University's IRB, Office of Research Compliance, and we are reviewed for our POE site and research team on an annual basis. Throughout the day-long process, as Amy mentioned, the POE team members meet with a variety of stakeholders and users. This is a hallmark of our POE. Everyone who participates is provided with a description of the POE visit at least 3 weeks prior to our arrival, and an informed consent is collected from all individuals who participate in interviews. Photo releases are also obtained on these consent forms. So everyone you see here or throughout any of our POE presentations has given permission for their photography, for the photograph to be used and published or presented in materials. Another step in our protocols is to have specific targets that we're using to evaluate aspects of the environment. We use the SAGE principles as our guide because these principles represent the attributes and outcomes that have been previously documented through research to be of value to users of an environment, specifically an environment that's focused on the housing and services for an older population. The principles are then cross-referenced to the stated design goals from the design team in their award submission. Now, this chart isn't intended to be legible from where you're viewing, but it demonstrates the manner in which the focus of the visit is initially conceived. We've used the design goals as a way to share our findings and observations with you. So these will be explained and highlighted as we go through the presentation today. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Steve.
Okay, thank you, Migette. So the site for the 2020 SAGE post-occupancy evaluation was at Meadowhaven, which is a community that's located in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And Chambersburg is in south central PA. It's roughly equal distance from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Washington, D.C., and is just a great little community out in south central PA. And we just want to really express a great appreciation for the hospitality and the openness that we received from the CEO, Hugh Davis, the COO, Roger Bynes, and the administrator, Deanna Bynes, as well as their guests at the community there and all of their staff. As we know, in order for this process to work really well, you have to be fairly transparent and you have to be willing to take some risks, and they certainly were. They gave us free access to everything and shared very openly about the process and the function of the building itself. So when they started the process, Meadowhaven had an initial goal of replacing an existing 152-bed nursing home. And in order to do that, they wanted to create home for those needing long-term care, and we're looking at a household model for that. But they also wanted to create a separate short-term post-acute care facility for the others that was in a distinct environment. And in order to do that, they called on RDG Planning and Design as the design team, and Jay Weingarten took the lead in this process. On the floor plan that you see on the next slide, this is the floor plan. We'll go into a little bit more detail on this and a little more explanation of it in a few minutes, but it includes 44 all private rooms, all have ensuite baths, and it is really designed as a short-term rehab building and exists solely for that purpose, although it is licensed as skilled nursing in the state of Pennsylvania. So the Meadowhaven team, as they got started on the process, they established 3 separate goals, and we're going to talk for the purpose of this POE today. We're going to cover the first 2, and then the third goal has to do with the Culinary Center of Excellence, and that'll be covered in a later webinar through SAGE. So one of the things we just really were impressed with was the amount of planning that the whole design team, including the Meadowhaven folks, put into this process. They were very intentional about the process that was used to inform the design that came out of that. And we were also impressed, frankly, with the bold ambition that the Meadowhaven leadership team had to not just create kind of a cool new building, but also to use that process to make a legitimate claim in the healthcare continuum in their area. They used this opportunity to step up and say, you know what, we are invested in providing high quality post-acute care in a way that redefines skilled nursing and repositions our organization in our community and in the healthcare continuum in our community. And as you see as we go through, they certainly did a fantastic job at that. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and you'll hear more about in this presentation, is the well building standards. And it was not one of the stated goals when they started out on the process, but because of the well building approach and philosophy fit so nicely with the purpose and goals of this project, it really meshed together and came together really nicely. And Meadowhaven was, in fact, the first senior living project to be certified by WELL. And at the time, they didn't even have a category for skilled nursing. So they had to work collaboratively just to create the process in order to get them through that whole certification program. So we want to take a little bit of time and look at the project through the design goals that were established by the team itself. And so the first goal that was identified by the team was to create a distinct environment that's not home. And again, that sounds counterintuitive in the skilled nursing world right now. But their whole focus was to create a first impression that changes the public perception of senior living. They wanted it to have modern details, vibrant colors, plant life, natural materials, high ceilings, all of those things. They wanted to create this sense that from the very first encounter, it would look different, it would feel different, it would function different. And again, it was not intended to be home, but it was really designed to be, in their words, a hotel that's offering healthcare services or a modern med spa. That's kind of the approach and the experience that they wanted people to have. And so for them, it was all about redefining what it means to be transferred to a skilled nursing facility in order to receive post-acute care. And that was not just in the function, not just in the look of building, but the whole experience, the emotion that people would have as they entered for the first time or as they came to visit, all played into that. And that, all of that and their approach certainly aligns with the SAGE principle of creating and evaluating to encourage innovation, diversity of approaches, experimentation with new solutions, and systematic evaluation of outcomes. And so we were thrilled to see that alignment as we went through. So the second aspect of this first goal was that the guest suites would be designed to transition the guest from a hospital to home as effectively as possible by incorporating research-based features such as concealed medical equipment, abundant natural light, views of nature, and natural materials into it. And you'll notice that they refer to the people who are receiving care there as guests, not residents. Again, the whole approach and the whole design is to create that short-term rehab program that focuses on the individual as a guest in this kind of hotel-like environment. But in spite of the fact that it's not home, they did hold on to small house principles. And so as you go through, you see things like it's clearly identified as neighborhoods. There's no call bells, there's no paging, there's no med cards, there's no nurses station. You don't see medical equipment stored in the hallways or, you know, all around. It's really very clean, and all of those details had been thought through really nicely from a person-centered experience. And again, this aligns with the SAGE principle of function-enhancing technology. How do you harness the technology to increase the functionality of the environment? And you'll see all of that playing out. And then kind of jumping back to the goal, they had a third aspect to this first goal of creating a distinct environment that's not home. And this had to do with designing the guest suites, the patient's primary environment, in order to reinforce healthy sleep patterns, to speed up recovery times, and reduce dependency on artificial light. And so again, it's not home, but it has this feel of a nice hotel where you receive medical care, medical services, and the amount of natural light is just striking as you walk through, and was noticed not just by our team, but by the staff and the guests who are receiving care there. And that connects with the SAGE principle that says that the environment is a therapeutic resource, and utilizing all aspects of the environment as a resource for healing and improved functioning. And also the SAGE principle of holism and well-being, looking at the whole person and meeting their needs holistically. So now we get to take a quick tour through the building. You'll see the floor plan here is a single-story building. It's laid out in a long rectangular design with the building sort of surrounding a large open-air courtyard. And at one end of the rectangle is a main entrance. That would be at the right side of the screen. That's the main entrance. It's got the administrative offices. The main therapy gym is located at that end. And all of that looks through and into the courtyard. And then on each side, going up the long sides of the rectangle, is two neighborhoods, each having 22 bedrooms or guest suites, each with their own full bathroom. And then at the far end of the rectangle on the left side is the bistro space, which serves breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks all day long, and is just a great gathering space. And this is also a space that overlooks and opens into that large central courtyard, which plays a pretty major role in the life of the building. And a benefit to the design of this building is by splitting up the therapy gym and the bistro and putting them at opposite ends of the building, it really forces the guests to move the length of the building several times during the course of the day. And that is a part of what helps to assist in their therapy program and accomplishing their therapy goals. And, you know, in long-term care, we oftentimes really work hard to shorten the ambulatory distances, but here there's actually a therapeutic benefit to the journey, to walking the building, to, you know, being more mobile and getting back and forth. And so that helps to play into the therapeutic goals of the guests who are receiving care there. And it also creates a clear distinction between separate zones for work, sleep, and eating, all nicely delineated in the building itself. So you'll see as we go to the next slide, there is just a very different feel. As you walk into the main entrance, you know, that idea that the space is not home is very evident the minute you get to the lobby. And in fact, even from the exterior of the building, as you approach it, you see that this is not a typical nursing home. You know, this is not long-term care. And as soon as you walk into the lobby, it sets the expectation for the rest of the experience. It gives a sense of a hotel that offers health services. It gives a sense that you're coming into that medical spa that is modern and fresh and a great place to recover, but not a place where you're going to live long term. The next slide, you'll see the lobby space, and again, lots of natural light. It's got a coffee bar in the back end of the photo there, and just serves as a great gathering place at the very front of the building. The therapy staff actually pointed out this particular lobby is just adjacent to the therapy gym. And one of the things they noted, and something kind of to take away, is that all of the furniture is at the same height. And they had suggested that it would have been helpful to have a couple of seats that are higher for their patients who come in status post hip replacement or hip fracture so that they didn't have to get down as low. So just kind of a great opportunity as you're planning interior spaces to make sure you have those varied seat heights. But all in all, just a great lightly or brightly lit space with lots of great color and animation and movement and so forth. Then as you leave that hall or that lobby area, it goes right into the therapy entrance. And it's probably worth noting here, you'll see at the front of the picture on the left, there is a transition issue. And the guests that we interviewed commented frequently that you have to be aware of those transitions, you know, the bumps, as they called them, between the carpet and the hard floor. But they said not to worry. The staff warns you to be careful of that. And what we found through the course of it was that was actually not planned in the original design, but as it went through construction, there were some changes in materials that led to that transition. So just a great word of encouragement for the owners and others out there to just kind of stay tuned to those details as you go through construction, because things can change and can create some challenges and obstacles. The other thing that they had, which was very interesting and unique, was a on-site physician practice that was planned for the building from the beginning and really worked well. It not only provides physician coverage for the building and for the guests who are there, but it also gives an increased opportunity for people from the community to come in, engage with the building, engage with the space. And what we found out was people who came in to see their doc at the medical practice were out in the community after that, telling everybody else what an amazing place it was. You got to go check this out. So it really turned into some great word-of-mouth advertising just by all of the foot traffic that came and went through to get to the physician practices. The physical therapy gym you see a photo of here on the screen was just a beautiful space. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen there is a whole wall of windows that looks out into the courtyard, and it just floods the space with natural light. In fact, however, due to the siting of the building, sometimes it floods that space with too much natural light. And you'll see even in the photo here, one of the blinds is drawn in the center. And what we noted was during the afternoon, all the blinds were drawn completely to the floor. And so it really negated the use of those beautiful windows. Just kind of thinking through that and that process ahead of time would be beneficial. But again, just a very functional space as we work through. One of the interesting things that the staff and actually the guests shared with us was that the therapy gym could have benefited from some additional square footage. That it was actually a little bit small. And that wasn't anything that was anticipated when it was designed and built. But in the process of going through construction, the regulations changed and allowed for more group therapy, or actually encouraged more group therapy, which puts more people in the gym. And then also the outpatient volume that they were seeing, it was much more of a hit than anyone anticipated. And so they were getting really large numbers of outpatient volume, which helped the productivity in the building, but did cause some challenges in terms of the function of the space and even in the parking in the front of the building. So the staff were working on that. They had managed that. They had choreographed the flow of the room. There was one way to enter. You would circulate in a certain pattern and leave in a certain way. So it was all manageable and doable, but it was something to consider. And then the other part, there was a change just in terms of the introduction of technology as they went through this design process. And with the introduction of electronic charting, there was no longer a need for the charting rooms. So they were doing all of their documentation on mobile devices and realized that all that space that used to be so highly valued by therapy teams for charting was no longer needed. So they were talking about ways to possibly repurpose that. The other thing to point out on the next slide as we go through the therapy gym is just this great space for stair training. They had really created a clever way to do that and to do it in a way that has more real-life application. And so you see the stairway, you get to the top of that short set of steps. Instead of just turning around and coming back down, there's a small landing with a doorway that simulates a lot of apartment buildings, a lot of homes, and gives people an opportunity to really do some training with the therapist in an environment that is much more realistic than many therapy gyms, certainly in skilled nursing environments. So kudos to the team for putting that level of realistic application into the product. They also, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the screen, they had invested in some great technology. They had an Alter-G machine, which not too many rehab programs have, that gives a great opportunity for limited weight-bearing patients to get therapy there. They had some equipment called Virtue Sense, which is a fall risk assessment that uses artificial intelligence to identify deficits in balance and gait and function and so forth. And they use that not only with the people in the building, but all of their independent living residents on the campus in order to help with a fall prevention program and get people therapy when they need it by using that equipment. So again, great implementation of technology in the midst of the therapy area. And then going out from that gym into the therapy courtyard, this was another great space that had really been well thought through. There's different conditions there in order to train the guests on real-world obstacles that they might encounter: curbs, steps, grass, gravel, uneven surfaces. All of those things are simulated in this therapy courtyard. Now, the one thing you will notice is there's not a lot of plant life out there. And so that was maybe our one critique of this space, although we were there in January. So it's not the best time in Pennsylvania to see vegetation and plant life taking true form. And it was early in the life of the building, so we would anticipate that would be something that would come along and continue to grow and develop. But an opportunity for more trees, for more shade in that space would be beneficial. But the therapists said they really enjoyed, on nice days and nice weather, taking the guests out and using this space as an extension of the actual therapy gym. The next slide just shows the different surfaces that I had mentioned before, different materials that were used, and so forth. The POE team kind of made note that some of the cement was fairly bright and had a lot of glare, that it could have benefited from some tinting. And, the benefit of reducing glare, especially when there's that much hardscape outside, is really important. But, again, we're there in January, and everything was a little bit stark. I think the trees will grow in, and it should come together nicely. Then as you go back through around those sides of the building, you remember those from the floor plan, those long, the corridors that go back through with the bedrooms on either side, the guest rooms on either side, and it's split into two neighborhoods, and they call them Garden Way and Coastal Way, and we noted that they were differentiated by color, so a light blue and a light green, but aside from that, we're relatively nondescript. Again, they're not trying to feel like home. It's more of a hotel-like environment, and it certainly fits the bill for that. But it could be a little bit disorienting. Wayfinding could be a little bit of an issue. One of the guests told us that it doesn't really matter what direction you turn. If you keep going in that direction, you'll eventually come to what you're aiming for, because it is in one big loop. So it still works from that regard. But on the next slide, you'll see one of the things that they did really nicely along the way was to add these little areas of interest, these little pops of color, of pattern, of lighting, of artwork that are all used to create interest in the corridor spaces. And there was some discussion among the team about whether the carpet was too busy, but I know from my experience, we pretty much hear that from our residents, regardless of how the carpeting is. So that's just one of those discussions that occurs in any environment like this. One of the guests that we were interviewing noted that the flow of the building is really good. They said you touch base with different things on the way around the circle. You have a lot of variety, and they noted that they really appreciated that. So we're going to duck into one of those rooms, and Amy's going to spend a little bit of time walking us through the guest suites.
Thanks, Steve. So yeah, the guest suites are paired so that they are mirrored about the head wall. However, the design of the windows on the exterior wall doesn't mirror. So this means that some rooms have that long window that you see on the left of the picture. Some of them have it on the bedside, and some of them have it at the desk, as shown here. The unfortunate result of that is that each room has a different variety of light, or a different amount of light. If you're in this configuration, there's plenty of light at the desk, but not enough to read a book at the chair. And if it's the flip side, there's no task light at the desk, so the desk would be too dark. This can be easily solved with some additional lighting, but it's just something that we noticed, that it wasn't an even condition. And the guests complained that even in this condition with the floor lamp that you see there, it just wasn't bright enough to actually read a book. However, the high window has a light diffusing sill, and it was designed to bring in lots of natural light, which it does. And if you remember, one of their goals was to decrease the need for artificial light and reinforce circadian rhythms. One of the guests commented, he said, it was so bright and sunny today, that window just lit up my room without me even having to raise the shade. So it seems to be working. One other thing to note is that all of the resident rooms are carpeted, and we asked the residents specifically about this, and 3 out of 4 residents preferred the carpet over a resilient floor. The one who wanted a resilient floor said that she felt it would be easier for her to use with her walker, but the others preferred carpet for the perceived warmth or cushioning for falls. The building was designed to be very flexible and to handle a variety of rehab guests. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. Medical gases and suction are provided in every room, and they were cleverly hidden behind this picture above the bed. The picture just lifts away with a minor touch, and you have all the gas and suction in every room. And the staff felt that having that was really helpful to them because they're seeing more medically complex cases. And this really, having all that backup in each room really gives them an advantage over their competition because they can take more difficult cases and people who need the extra oxygen or suction. They also use a product called Early Sense, and it's a pad that goes under the mattress and can detect heart rate, movement, respiration rate, and track the trends on all of them. And it helps the staff not to have to bother the residents and wake them up in the middle of the night when they're sleeping, but it can track the changes. And then the one issue that the staff admits doesn't work well is that the residents can't easily access lighting controls when they're lying in bed. And then moving on to like the little details, because sometimes it's those little details that matter. The senior staff said that they really wanted this to feel like a resort and not a home. And they extend this philosophy through all those little details that are reminiscent of a nice hotel. They have flowers when you arrive and a nice card welcoming you. There's chocolates on your pillow every night. And, you know, the residents that we talked to said, you know, when you're sick, your surroundings really matter. And they appreciated all those little touches. The staff provided safes for valuables. And unlike a hotel, the windows are actually operational, which we appreciated because there are some really nice days that you want to get that breeze. We did have one concern about the hangers that you see in kind of the top center of this slide. It has that little post that you have to put into the hole so that they're theft-proof hangers. You know, we understand that these are very common in hotels, but we thought that these were a little bit difficult for older adults to use, to take them down and hang them back up, especially if they were recovering from a shoulder or arm surgery. It probably would have been better to take the risk of loss and use regular hangers there. The bathrooms were very spacious and well appointed. The staff noted that they really loved the fold down grab bars on both sides of the toilet, and they liked the swivel mirrors. The night light is a nice amber color, which is best for not disrupting the sleep. And plus it adds a really nice glow to the trash can below it. You'll notice in another slide that, you know, we saw when we walked down the hall that every trash can was just glowing as you walk down the hall. It's kind of fun. The showers have a nice sturdy seat with legs, and there was a rubber dam at the front of the shower to help keep water in. Now, showers were designed to meet accessibility codes, but our team noted that the placement of the controls and the shower wand made it almost impossible for a staff member to assist the guest. It was great for the guest if they were sitting on the bench, but not so much if a staff member had to reach over and get themselves wet. Now, the designers could have applied for a waiver in Pennsylvania that allows for the controls to be moved elsewhere. And just as a side note, The 2021 building codes have been amended to allow provisions for assisted toileting and bathing, and they will allow you to move those shower controls. So just something to keep an eye out for. The building also has 4 rooms that were designed for bariatric guests. Now, I say they claim that they were designed for bariatric guests, but they really were the same size as all the other rooms, but they had a ceiling lift installed. And there was one guest who was in a bariatric room and had a larger wheelchair and said that he wanted a smaller bed because there wasn't really enough space to maneuver his wheelchair around. Personally, I don't think it was the bed size per se, but I think that the room just needed to be a little bit larger for that reason, because you do need more clearance when maneuvering around in a larger wheelchair. Where the typical resident door, the resident bathroom had a barn door, the bariatric rooms had a swing door because of the lift track. One of the guests who stayed in this room said that he had difficulty using the door, so he just left it open most of the time. The problem with that is that when you're in the hallway, you have a direct line of sight to the mirror and into the bathroom. So it probably wasn't the most private situation. Maybe if the door was hinged on the other side, it would make it better, because the door being open would still block the view into the bathroom, but then that interferes with the door to the hallway. It's just a tough situation. I think if there's any manufacturers on the call today out there, we really need you to work on a split track barn door system so that we can get barn doors to work even with the lift track.
Let me chime in on that, Amy. Hear to that, please. Go on.
Thanks, Jill. In the middle image there, you see a better picture of the fold down grab bars on both sides. The team really liked the feature that they could fold them flat against the wall when they weren't being used, so they were fully out of the way. And we also liked that they were nylon coated instead of bare metal. It just looks nicer and it's warmer on the hands. The one thing that we wish that there was more contrast between the toilet and the grab bars on the wall behind it. I mean, it's just all white and white. There is a pretty good contrast though between the toilet and the floor below, so that's a positive. One of the things that all the guests actually complained about was the reclining chairs in their rooms. Most of them said that it was just too stiff and they couldn't sit on them for too long. One of them actually said, "My backside needs a rest after sitting in that chair." In addition, there was another guest who said that his oxygen tubes kept getting caught in the gaps in the leg rest and it would pull the tube out of his nose. Probably not the best. So think about that a little bit when you're designing that for that furniture. Midway down the hall in each neighborhood, there's a casual gathering space, which we refer to as a living room. The floor to ceiling windows in this area just really flooded the area with light, and it draws you in from the darker corridor. There's a wet bar in the back with coffee and snacks for guests. There's a fireplace, and there's a large TV, and it really was a nice space that could be used for visiting with family or meeting other guests. In fact, one of the guests that we interviewed said, "I don't feel like I have to spend time in my room by myself. I can go out and visit or get a hot chocolate. I like that I can have family come in and eat with me or just visit in the living rooms." Also in the center of each neighborhood hallway is a cluster of staff spaces. It's the care base, and remember, it's not a nurse station. Words really matter in this situation, so it's a care base. It's just a small alcove and it's open to the corridor. They have a small closet behind this space to enable staff to make private phone calls if needed. Interesting thing on the picture on the left, you see that there's a long skinny window. The Department of Health actually made them insert a window at the team room so that the staff had direct visibility line of sight to the med room, which you can see in the bottom center picture. But then the staff later came back and added frosting, like a film, to the lower half of the glass to hide the knee space under the desk. And one of the things that was interesting to me, and this the center top picture is that each care base has a panic button to quickly lock down all the doors in the event of an emergency, like an active shooter. And this is my first time seeing that, but I guess it's an unfortunate reality these days.
And where is that control located? Inside of that observation room, or?
It's inside the care base, yeah.
Care base, okay.
Like under the desk. So there is one med room on each neighborhood, and again, it's in that midway point in the hall to provide equal access for all the rooms and negate the need for med carts. You can see all the little blue bins in the picture. There's one per guest, and all of their meds would be stored in that bin. The staff did mention that the size of the refrigerators that you see on the lower right could have been larger, and they would have appreciated having the refrigerator pulled up on a pedestal to help ergonomics. They also do have an overflow medication room in the back of house area with a large refrigerator and the central pharmacy dispenser computer thing. I don't know what that's called. Storage is handled really, really well in this building. There are several alcoves that are scattered throughout the plan for storage of equipment. And these spaces, these little alcoves also doubled as touchdown stations where charting could take place at a standing desk. And one of the stated goals of the senior staff was that they wanted to decrease staff injuries through the increased use of lifts. So having all the lifts scattered around and conveniently located to the rooms is really critical to this effort. And I do think that this is the first community I've ever talked to that said that they had enough storage space. Kudos to the design team for doing that. The bistro is a vibrant space. Remember, this is home, so it's not the dining room. It's it's not home, so it's not the dining room. It's the bistro space. This orange ceiling treatment is actually an acoustical treatment. And it was added later after the opening because all the hard surfaces and the open kitchen made the space just too noisy. The whole design team thought that this was a really creative solution, and it adds a lot of vibrance to the space. The pendant light fixtures also have an acoustic treatment wrapped around them. The space is still a little loud, so maybe a few more panels would be needed, maybe on that blue bulkhead that goes along there. But in general, we thought they did a really good job. We did like the variety of the seating. There was a long common table that most of the guests chose to eat at, but then there were others that chose the banquettes or the individual tables. Staff said that there's a lot of visitors that like to come and eat here with the guests, and sometimes there's just not enough room. We talked about eliminating those planters that are in the center of the room there. They were brought in to create that biophilia and that connection to nature, but we felt that these probably could be sacrificed and bring in another long common table. Next, the dining courtyard also has the dining room has direct access to the central courtyard. This end of the space is really geared towards passive enjoyment of the outdoors, and it's a place to relax, versus the other end near the therapy space that was more for testing your abilities on the outdoor world. We really liked the comfy seating and the fire pit and the incorporation of water for a pleasant noise. One of the guests commented that the water was really nice. The pools and lilies and carp are worthwhile. But another one said, I can't get too much sun and there's no shade out there, so it really limits the time I spend outside. So I think, as Steve mentioned, that once the trees grow up, I think it'll be better, but maybe in the meantime, some shade structures or sails or something could be added. The other thing we noticed on the picture on the left is that these doors to the outdoors have a 2-inch threshold, and we weren't sure if this was done to provide another place to train for the outside world, or if these doors were just for, opening to let in ventilation, because there were other doors without thresholds that you could access the courtyard, but that was just a point of curiosity for our team. So as we mentioned, another big part of the building was the incorporation of the well building standard. So let's try to dive in a little bit. Most of you have probably heard of LEED, and certainly you've heard about sustainable buildings. But the well building standard goes a step further than just the building and really focuses on the people that use the building. It focuses on health and wellness of humans, and doing good for the environment is more of a side benefit. There's a lot that goes into it, and we could really probably do a whole presentation on well alone, but we're going to have to encourage you to look into it on your own. We'll just tell you a little bit about what we learned. But in essence, there are required things that must be done and optional points in each of these categories. Now, you're not meant to be able to read this, but this was the scorecard from Menno Haven that RDG created. RDG had to educate well because some of the requirements for well buildings doesn't work at all for senior living. An example was that well required all bedrooms to be painted dark colors to promote more restful sleep. Well, that's great for your home, but RDG needed to explain that here in the guest rooms, while they, yes, are bedrooms, they're also used for other purposes during the day. In addition, the light reflectance value of the walls helps use less artificial light, which was another one of their goals. In the end, Well and RDG worked together to create a custom scorecard that worked for skilled nursing. And as a result, Menno Haven was the first Well certified senior living project in the country, I think in the world, but I'm not positive on that. Well also made modifications to their version 2.0 that incorporated many of the concepts that were used here in this building. So let's go through some of the categories, starting with air and indoor air quality. Well is very prescriptive on many items that impact indoor air quality. Things like only approved chemicals can be used for housekeeping. You have to use microfiber cloths and mop heads with a very specific nap to them. You have to vacuum each room twice a day, and each time you vacuum, you have to go in a different direction, like turn 90 degrees from itself. And all high-touch areas must be wiped down at least twice a day. All of these activities have to be documented daily and sent to Well once a quarter to make sure that they're being done properly in order to maintain certification. Another thing is that air filters on every air handler have to be replaced quarterly, and the coils have to be inspected to ensure that there's no mold growth. They actually have to take pictures of the coils in each air handler once a quarter. And all of this has to be documented and sent to Well. And the staff estimated this added, just this one component here of the air handler inspection added 0.5 FTE to their staffing just to keep up with this, because they have 96 air handlers on this project. Can't even imagine. Perhaps not surprisingly then, the maintenance and housekeeping staff expressed frustration over the added work of all the documentation. However, the housekeeper we spoke with said that even if she didn't have to meet Well, she would absolutely use some of the techniques because she believed in them. Specifically, the mopping protocol, which uses a container of cleaning solution, kind of like a Swiffer wet jet, instead of a mop bucket. And she says that it just works much better and it feels cleaner. The real proof of how good the air quality is here at Menno Haven is when we talked to Richard, who is one of the guests. He said, they must clean the air here. I don't know what they do, but I have allergies and asthma, and I breathe so much better when I'm here. It turns out he says that his oxygen level readings improved greatly when he's in that building. And this is his second stay, so he's been able to compare, being here, leaving, going home, and then coming back. And to me, that's just really valuable proof. The next is water quality. The staff expressed frustration because the municipal water didn't meet Well standards, so they had to add a whole building water filter. In addition to that, each piece of equipment, like coffee and ice makers, each require their own water filter, and if it was removed, it would void the warranty for the equipment. So most of the pieces of equipment that use water are actually double filtered. I will say, though, that their coffee was the best tasting coffee I've ever had, and the staff really talked about how good the water tasted right out of the tap. Food and nutrition is a big aspect to well, and it's part of the human side of well. So just quickly, some of the details are all menus contain information on calories, fat content, sodium, carbohydrates, allergens, everything. Standard menus, they standardize all the menus across the entire campus, so everybody's eating the same food no matter what level of care you have. And they were all developed largely on reducing sugar content. They also reduced portion sizes. One might say that they were right-sized, but nothing prevents people from having more than one portion, but they found that most people are satisfied after one. And then they also arranged the food items, as you can see in the picture on the right, like the snack chips, like bags of Doritos and stuff like that, were down low at like below knee level. So you really kind of had to bend down and look for them. But then by the register was fruit and other healthy snacks. So they were more desirable to choose. I'm just going to try to move this along a little bit faster because I know we're running out of time. I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
biophilia is a
Amy, I just wanted to chime in. If there's anyone else that can't stay with us and hold back after, if we do run a little longer, be sure to write in your questions in the Q&A and we'll try to answer them during this or send them afterwards. So go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Biophilia is another requirement for WELL certification as part of the MIND category. Research shows that it reduces stress, improves health. So RDG actually brought in real plants, as you see on the right-hand side, that have a grow light above them, as well as some fake plants. So skip to the last slide here. Just some quick other details. Education is a big component. So every guest gets a binder that you see on the right-hand side that explains all the different features of the building, gives information about fitness, stress relief, and other things. The light, we talked about that they were trying to bring in a lot of natural light, and the lighting levels were very good throughout the building. WELL requires a high level of testing of air quality, water, radon, noise, other thermal comfort items, and all of that had to be done before the certification was granted, and they have to do it ongoing every year to maintain certification. So in the end, we asked the senior staff if they would seek WELL certification again, and their answer was that they would absolutely follow the rules and the design guidelines for WELL, but they probably would not take the step to go to certification. And the reason why was because they cited the added expense and the paperwork that was required, and they just didn't feel it was really worth it to them.
So there's a lot of different components to the WELL building system and to the whole process that went in. And in kind of wrapping things up here today, the question is, did it work? The proof is always in the pudding. And so for that, we look at, the comments that we heard in the interviews with the guests and the staff. And the guests were just overwhelmingly positive. They had lots of great comments. They said it's a fabulous place. The rooms are well designed. They're very comfortable. They're relaxing. One person said, you actually feel good just being here. There's so much light, and light brings encouragement. I think that, for me, was the quote of the day. There's so much light, and light brings encouragement. They talked about it being such a fabulous building, and to be in Chambersburg. They were so pleased and impressed with that. One person said, we're in this building that would be welcome anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world, and we have it here in Chambersburg. How amazing is that? And so they gave the organization a lot of credit for being innovative, for being forward-thinking. They really just thought it was outstanding and were telling all their friends about it. So all of that planning paid for itself just in terms of the credibility for the program and the free word-of-mouth advertising that they got. And then when we interviewed staff, we heard much the same thing. They talked about the building providing a wow experience, that the building actually gives people a sense of hope and optimism. You know, people are thinking they're going to a nursing home, and then they get here and realize it's not the end, they said. There's a sense of community that forms there very quickly. One person said, you know, from a staff perspective, it's just easier to come to work when it's bright and cheery. They talked about the water tasting great, as Amy mentioned. They loved having access to the outdoors. It's great for the guests. It's equally great for the staff to be able to get out and get a little sunshine, even on a quick break. And so on and on and on. They just had all of these great comments. A couple of the rooms they thought could be a little bit larger and so forth, but by and large, the effort that the planning team, that the design team put into this really paid huge dividends in terms of the outcomes that were expressed by both staff and guests. And of course, in today's world, you need to have both of those, and each is equally difficult to get. So they really did a nice job executing on that vision that they set out in the beginning. With that, I think we will go to questions and entertain any of the questions that might have come in. Jill?
Perfect. Thank you. All of that looks very wonderful report, you guys. Thank you so much, Amy, Migette, and Steve. This does conclude the AIA CES education portion of the course, and I know we are right on the top of the hour here, but we're not finished yet. We do have a few minutes to go through any questions you may have, and you should see the Q&A button at the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Just click on that and type in your questions, and let's get to those questions. Let's see. The first one is, what resources do we have through Sage for us to help to complete more POEs or post-occupancy evaluations as a firm? We feel like we need to do a better job. Any of you want to answer that? I'll call you out. Is this available? Is this report and webinar available for them to access? Is also a question.
Yeah. So I guess I'll jump in on that. The first thing is, we need your projects.
Yes.
We need you to submit to the EFA Design Showcase. We want to see what's happening out there, and we're very interested in an incredible cross-section of design innovation. So from Sage's perspective, we rely on what you push out and show EFA and the rest of the world what your firms are doing. And we are constantly looking for that next POE. The information that comes from our previous POEs, including this one, are available through the Sage resources. And I understand we have a new website in development, so stay tuned for that, because there should be some great links that you can actually tap on the different white paper reports we've developed. But we need your commitment to the POE process by contributing project ideas. And we know that this is something that our industry values, because the more we can get out there and see these innovative projects, the more we can share with the rest of you. So I guess just get your projects to us and let us know what you're doing.
Well stated, Migette, well stated. Also too, when you receive the email follow-up, you'll get a copy of this recorded webinar too, as a follow-up too, to add that. And we are very welcome to hear about your projects, and seen in this perspective from the post-occupancy evaluation, it's putting that stamp of approval, or what was done well, from a different set of eyes and rigorous process. So let's see. Also, too, included in your email will be a link to the white paper, the full report completed by this team. So you'll see that in your email as well. Okay, can you review again what motivates Sage to initiate a group post-occupancy evaluation rather than simply allowing the architectural firm to conduct it on their own? I think, Amy, you covered that in one of your first few slides. So why does Sage?
Yeah, I mean, I think Yeah, I mean, I think that it's incredibly valuable for architecture firms to complete their own as well. But one of the benefits of SAGE's POE process is the multidisciplinary approach and bringing in those multiple viewpoints to look at a space or a building through different lenses. And I think that you get a richer result from it.
All right, perfect. In one of the slides, you reviewed costs for construction. Did this include the renovation of the remaining long-term care on the community? You had mentioned going from 152 long-term care beds to 44 short stay. Those costs of construction include that?
No, this was just the new building.
Okay. Okay. And looking at the floor plan in the large kitchen, does that kitchen support only these 44 guests or to support the rest of the balance of the campus?
Yeah, actually, that's going to be the focus of our next webinar, which I believe is in December. Keep an eye on the SAGE emails and the website for that. But they had a whole production kitchen built into this building that serves the entire Menno Haven campus, all areas of the campus, just out of this one kitchen. And it was pretty revolutionary. And I think you'll find the next webinar very interesting.
Okay, and that is probably on our website, and I should make sure you all check that as well. Okay, the physical therapy and the occupational therapy. What is the total finished square footage? Does anyone have that at their fingertips? Not sure.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't either.
Okay, we can follow up in another email or something. Okay.
Okay.
Amy mentioned the code exemption that allows the accessible shower head to be located on the side wall versus the back wall. Do you know if this also applies in I-1 occupancy? Can you repeat which version of the code this is?
Yes, it is going to be published in the 2021 International Building Code, Chapter 11, and it does apply to both I-1 and I-2 uses or occupancies. We're also, there's a group working to get this into the A117 code as well.
Okay, thank you. This question is mostly for Steve. Steve, you're called out on this one. Do you think all of the housekeeping requirements of the well building standard are worth the return on investment?
Oh, great question. You know, I loved all the concepts of the well building. I like the impact it had. I would struggle, quite honestly, to devote that many man hours to, you know, vacuuming the carpet 3 different ways in the course of a day and documenting each one and taking all the photographs of the air filters on such a regular basis, all those kind of things. From an owner-operator perspective, it would be tough to put that much money into those aspects. But I don't think that negates the overall impact of the well building protocols and the benefits that the overall design brings.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Do you see the not home or hotel-like design as a current trend in senior living projects in general? Or is it more desired in skilled nursing and similar projects for temporary stays? I think what they're asking is for short stay skilled care versus a long-term care scenario.
Yeah, I'll take that one. And in talking with the team there, they did this specifically because they had long-term care on their campus. They did not want this program to become long-term care. They wanted it to always be focused on high acuity, short-term rehab patients. And so they designed it in order to meet that need. Sort of like when you go to a fast food restaurant, they have all those bright, colorful benches, but they start to get a little uncomfortable after a while, and you feel the need to get up and you know, shorten your stay there and move on. Kind of the same thing, where they want people to have a great stay, to have a great memory of it, but not to live there forever. And so one great way to do that is design it in a way that gives you cues that it's not home. Now, Menno Haven did just open a month or 2 ago, I think, their new households for long-term care, which are much more residential in nature and have a very, very different feel. So from their perspective, I think they would tell you that this is purposely designed to be short-term stay and would see it as filling that need. It wouldn't work well for long-term care.
Okay. Next, two more questions, and I know we're over on time, so I appreciate all that are staying after to hear these questions. Two more questions, and we'll wrap up. Did the bariatric room designers keep in mind access to the outdoors? Was that addressed in the POE?
I don't know that there was specific discussion about that, but certainly those guests would have had easy access in the same way that the other guests did. There was, through the core area of the building there, the PT gym, or out in the dining area, there would have been easy access for those individuals as well.
Okay. And then we typically see microwaves and small kitchenettes used these days in short stay units. Why did they not opt to include these in the unit? Is it probably because of the bistro? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
the bistro. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve. I was going to say that.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say they had the bistro was always available, and I think that they were hoping that the residents or the guests, would traverse the way there, and they also had the little wet bars with microwaves and fridges in the living room spaces.
Lounges. That makes sense. All right. Well, that does wrap it up for today's session. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing such valuable information and insight. And at the conclusion of this webinar, you'll be prompted to fill out a quick survey. Please provide comments or suggestions that can help us continue to provide interesting and worthwhile webinars. Any suggestions of future topics or subjects that you'd like us to cover, please put that in the response. We do hope you can join us on an upcoming webinar, and on behalf of Sage, thank you for joining us.